Hello everyone, welcome back to Science Free. In this tutorial, you'll be learning how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square and also how to graph quadratic functions. These are the shapes we get when we plot quadratic graphs. And these shapes are called a parabola. The point where the parabola touches the y-axis of the graph is called the y-intercept. And at the center, where the line touches the parabola, dividing it into two, is called the vertex of the parabola. Whereas the line is called the line of symmetry, as it cuts the parabola in half. This second shaped parabola, which is being turned upside down, is simply when we plot a quadratic equation that has a minus sign at the starting of the quadratic equation. The points where the parabola touches the x-axis of the graph are called the x-intercepts. And it has a y-intercept at the negative y-axis of the graph. We're gonna start off with this quadratic equation. We are gonna find the x-intercepts, the y-intercepts, and the vertex. All those are what we will need to easily plot a quadratic graph. Working out the values for x, which is the same as the x-intercepts, we rewrite this quadratic equation and make y equals 0. The next step is to rewrite the x squared plus 5x. The coefficient of b, which is a positive 5, we divide it into 2 and place brackets, then square them and add it after the 5x. The next step is to move over the value for c, which is a positive 6. Moving it over after the equal sign will cause it to become a minus x. And also, we add 5 divided into 2 between brackets squared. The fraction that is after the equal sign, which is minus 6 plus 5 squared over 2 squared. We need to work it out. Working it out we get 1 over 4. What we now need to do is to write in between brackets x and this plus sign which comes after it, along with 5 over 2. Then we squared the bracket because they were already squared outside the bracket. Next, we write an equal sign along with 1 over 4. We want to find x, and the first step is to remove the squared term. The opposite of squaring is to carry a square root. And what we do to one side we also do it to the other side, but first, we need to write plus and minus in front of the number after the equal sign. The square root sign cancels itself in the square, leaving x plus 5 over 2. The square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. That gives us 1 over 2. We need to make x stay alone on one side, so we move the fraction of positive 5 over 2 behind the number after the equal sign, and it will become minus 5 over 2. Because of the plus and minus sign, we will get two answers for x, either when we make the fraction 1 over 2 remain positive and subtract it from 5 over 2, or either when we make 1 over 2 negatives and subtract it from 5 over 2. The solutions that we get are x equals minus 2 and x equals minus 3. In the starting, we made y equals 0 to solve for x, now we need to make x equals 0 to solve for y. 0 squared plus 5 times 0 equals 0. 6 is left, so that means the y-intercept is equal 6. We need to find the 2 points for the vertex, and to find the x value of the vertex, we need to use the formula minus b over 2a. The coefficient of b is 5, we substitute it and make it a minus 5. 2 times a is simply 2 times the first coefficient of x squared, it's a 1x square, so that's 2 times 1 which gives back 2. We get minus 5 over 2. To now find the y value of the vertex, we replace x with minus 5 over 2 in the original equation. Minus 5 raised to the power of 2 is 25. 2 raised to the power of 2 is 4. So that's 25 over 4. 5 times minus 5 over 2 is equal to minus 25 over 2. And we add back 6. We now have fractions. The LCM is 4. We end up with a fraction of minus 1 over 4 for the y value of the vertex. We can write the x value of the vertex along with the y value in the table. Let's do some examples where we will be plotting graphs now. Solving for the x-intercepts, we change y to 0. We write x squared along with 2x. We need to now write the coefficient of b over 2, all in brackets squared and add. We want to move over minus 3 and it will become positive. And also add 2 divided into 2 between brackets all squared. We now need to work out this fraction. Doing that we get 4. We have to now write x along with this plus sign and the fraction of 2 over 2 in brackets squared. 2 over 2 in brackets all squared can be divided to get a whole number of 1, so we can write 1. We need to get rid of the square, so we draw a square root sign over x plus 1 in brackets squared. And we write a plus and minus sign after the equal sign and write a square root sign over 4 also. The signs cancel, leaving x plus 1. The square root of 4 is 2. We move over 1 so that x alone can remain on one side. Solving for x, we get x equals minus 3 and x equals 1. We can solve for the y-intercepts now by making x equals 0. After solving, we get minus 3. And because we don't have any x value for a y-intercept, we write 0, and minus 3. Finding the x value for the vertex, we get minus 1. Substituting the x value which we got for the vertex into the original formula to find the y-intercept, we get minus 4. Let's now plot the points on this graph. We look for minus 3 at the negative x-axis of the graph, and also we mark 1 on the positive x-axis. For the y-intercept, we need to locate minus 3 on the graph. For the vertex, we have minus 1 which represents the x-axis and minus 4 which represents the y-axis. We need to stay on the minus 1 axis, move 4 places down, and place a point. We can now connect the points and extend the lines. Let's find the x-intercepts by rewriting this equation and making it equal to 0. This quadratic equation has a minus sign in front of it, which means it's not in the standard form. For it to be in the standard form, it must be a 1x squared term. To make this equation be in standard form, we divide the whole equation into this minus sign, which is just an imaginary minus 1. Minus 1 divided into minus 1 will cancel out each other. Positive 2 divided into minus 1 will change 2 from positive to a minus 2. Positive 8 will become minus 8. We got the equation to be in standard form. We can solve for x now by completing the square. We rewrite the x squared term, minus 2x. We need to add minus 2 into 2 between brackets, all squared. We move over minus 8 and it will become a positive 8. And now we add minus 2 divided into 2 between brackets squared. Solving the fraction after the equal sign, we get 9. What we should do now is to write between brackets x -1, because when we square the brackets of -2 over 2 and divide, we get 1. To get rid of the brackets, we write a square root. We also do the same thing to the other side, but first, we write plus and minus after the equal sign. The square root of 9 is 3. We move over -1 behind 3 and it will become a positive 1. We get two solutions for x, which are 4 and -2. Finding the y-intercept, we change x to 0. The y-intercept is 8. What is left now to do is to find the vertex. We use the formula -b over 2a. The coefficient of b is 2, we make it a -2 and divide it into -2. Because 2 times the first coefficient of -1 is -2. We get a positive 1 after dividing. Substituting positive 1 to solve for the y value of the vertex, we get 9. Let's label and plot the points on the graph. We need to locate positive 4. -2 for the x-intercept can be found on the negative x-axis. 8 for the y-intercept can be found on the positive y-axis of the graph. For the vertex, we have 1 for the x-axis and 9 for the y-axis. We stay on the positive x-axis where 1 is and move 9 places up and place a point. We can start plotting the graph by plotting the points by drawing a curve here and here. Then extend using straight line which connects to the x-intercepts. We can extend. We've now reached the final example. We have a quadratic equation here that is not really in the standard form. We have a, but we don't have b, so we need to write 0x for b. We have the value for c, which is a -1, so we can write -1. To now solve for x, we rewrite the equation and change y to 0. We can rewrite x squared plus 0x. We place 0 over 2 between brackets squared. We move 1 over and it will become positive. And we also add 0 over 2 between brackets squared. 0 over 2 between brackets squared will give 0 allowing the 1 to remain. We write x plus 0 between brackets squared because dividing any number into 0 will give 0. For the x-intercepts, we only get positive 1 or -1 because of the plus and minus sign. We get -1 when solving for the y-intercept. Solving for the x value of the vertex, we get 0. Solving for the y value of the vertex gives -1. We locate -1 on the negative x-axis of the graph and mark an x or a dot. We also need to locate a positive 1 on the positive x-axis. For the y-intercept, we find -1 at the negative y-axis of the graph. We have only a y value for the vertex, we locate it at the negative y-axis. -1 at the y-axis is already marked. We only need to connect the points now to get a parabola shape. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section or you could send us an email through our email provided in the description.